Do you feel prepared in the event of an emergency? I'm Gloria Cohn. This is City Hall in Focus. And joining me in the studio today is Greg Rothaus. He's the Chief of Police of the City of San Carlos. Greg, when I think of a disaster or emergencies, I think of an earthquake. However, the City of San Carlos does have an airport. They have rails, they have buses. How is the city government prepared for any kind of a disaster?
Well, when we think about disasters in the city, we think about an earthquake too, because that is the most likely scenario. In terms of bus accidents, train accidents, and things like that, they do happen on occasion, but they don't rise to the level of a local emergency, such as, say, a wildland fire or an earthquake or something like that. So the city has a lot of things going on to help be prepared for that. We have a comprehensive and emergency operations plan in the city. We have an emergency operations center right here upstairs with technology and equipment to help us manage a local disaster. Our employees, all our employees, have been through training in terms of handling a local emergency. And we even have scenarios, fake scenarios that we work through called tabletop exercises that help us prepare for some sort of a local disaster. So we do a lot. It's ongoing, and we do a lot to stay updated and trained on this. And we go through the scenario training as well, which is really beneficial.
City government has prepared. How about the specific things a police department does?
Well, the police department, handling emergencies is kind of our day-to-day business. It's what we do for a living. But in terms of a local disaster, we train with city staff. We train to handle local emergencies alongside the public works director, the fire chief, our city manager. So when it comes to major disaster training, we're kind of in the same basket as them. We need to train as well.
You have CERT teams available. Please tell me what a CERT stands for and then what that team is going to do in the event of an emergency.
CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team, and they are trained civilians, people who live in our communities who are trained to assist local law enforcement, fire and public works in the event of a local disaster. And more importantly, they're trained to kind of assist their neighbors and their neighborhood. If we were to have a local emergency, obviously first responders would be inundated with calls. And so CERT team members is kind of an extension of local law enforcement and fire in that they're trained to help provide some sort of assistance. For example, they're trained on minor first aid. They're trained to shut off gas and water. They're trained to go door to door and to check on their neighbors and to report. They have communication systems. They have plans and grids that they can set up to assist. So very, very valuable asset. And Redwood City Fire Department is who runs that for us. And so if somebody was interested in being part of that, they can contact Redwood City Fire Department.
And there's training involved in that as well, right?
There is training involved in that for all the participants, yes.
As the Chief of Police, what will be your priorities when a disaster occurs?
Well, the priorities for police, fire, and public works during a local emergency will be the preservation of life. And that will be the very first priority. So depending upon the nature of the emergency, and hopefully we don't have one that comes to that magnitude, but if we do, whether it's collapsed buildings or structure fires or whatnot, our priority is going to be everything we can to save any lives that are in danger. That's the #1 priority.
Do you believe that people are prepared?
The good news is some are, but unfortunately many are not. They're not prepared. And I think one of the reasons is because we don't, a local emergency is an abstract idea to us that maybe many of us have never lived through, so it doesn't feel real. And maybe that's why we're not prepared. Also, some people might think it's kind of daunting. I got to do all this stuff to get ready. And it's really not. So, some are, but unfortunately too many are not.
When I Googled emergency preparedness, you can go online and get kits, and they have them all packaged up for you,
Yeah.
right?
That's what makes it easy. You can sit at home and watch the Giants game and order all the stuff you need to prepare for a local emergency. You can go online to do it. So it is really very simple. And also a lot of us are already kind of prepared. We have a lot of stuff at home that helps us prepare. For example, if you have any canned goods and things, then you've got food at home in the event of a local emergency. So you're good there. A lot of us keep bottled water at home, and we have water. We have blankets, flashlights, and things like that. So getting the kits ready is really not that daunting, but it's important that we all do it because in an emergency, as we talked about earlier, the priority of first responders is going to be in preservation, the preservation of life, and they may not be available for other types of calls.
Yeah, we have to fend for ourselves.
You may.
Yeah, and what how much provision should we keep on hand? Are we talking about hours? Are we talking about days? Are we talking about weeks?
You know, the standard in the past has been for 72 hours. And, but as they talk more and more about it, they really recommend 5. It's really becoming more recommended 5 days. So I would recommend that people have about 5 days worth of living supplies in the event of a local emergency that you can handle yourself for 5 days. Because if it is very severe, the likelihood of a first responder coming to your place, if you don't have a life-threatening emergency, is very low.
With regard to provisions like medicine, water, and food, we should prepare for hours, for days, for weeks?
Yeah, you know, they used to say like 72 hours, but really there's this conversation about maybe more like 5 days. And I think people should be prepared really to be self-sustaining for a period of about 5 days.
We have to fend for ourselves.
You may have to fend for yourselves. I mean, in terms of a local emergency, all the first responders could be committed to life-threatening situations, and they're not going to be responding to anything less than that for a good period of time, possibly, depending upon the scope and nature of the emergency.
In a neighborhood, someone may not have a CERT team member
Right.
who will help in any situation. How can neighborhoods or even neighbors be proactive?
You know, the first thing starts with ourselves. What are we doing in terms of personal responsibility to be personally prepared? And you know, so one thing is don't make yourself and your home an emergency. Have your stuff taken care of. Don't create demands on first responders. And you can do that by being prepared, by learning how to shut off your gas, learning how to turn off your water, having medicine, food, water, understanding first aid in case something happens so that you can do that within your family. So it starts with our own personal responsibility at home. And then, you know, working with your neighbors, and I think the CERT team is a really good thing for people to consider doing. It is a way to not only, when they teach you in CERT, is first you're number one, so how to take care of your own home. But they also teach you how to take care of and work with your neighbors and how to help the neighborhood. So be prepared personally and really consider CERT.
And it sounds like we shouldn't procrastinate anymore.
No, because it's one of those things that's always looming. It could happen today, and it could happen 10 years from now. But all the experts say we're going to face a major earthquake. They just don't know when.
You have spurred me on to go home and take a look at what I have on hand, make sure that I have enough provisions. And I think that's really good advice that he gave us today. Thank you so much for all that information. Thank you for joining me today on City Hall in Focus. If you want more information about the Police Department of San Carlos or any information about the city, you can always go to their website. I'm Gloria Cohn. This is City Hall in Focus.